The shocking truth about the Proverbs 31 woman. What they never told you at church. Dark clouds loomed over the quiet town of Maplewood as whispers filled the air like a brewing storm. The Proverbs 31 woman, a figure woven into sermons, and praised in hushed tones, harbored secrets that could shatter everything. She wasn't the perfect, dutiful housewife most thought. No, she was a symbol of something deeper, something darker. Her strength and virtue cloaked a mounting horror that twisted the very fabric of faith. What were they hiding from her story? As the church bells tolled, hitting that eerily harmonic note, one thing became clear: people were unsettled. They would nod with understanding, but their eyes glinted with something else, a fear tangled with curiosity. "Have you heard?" a neighbor gasped to another through clenched jaws, hinting at the rumors surrounding her past, wrapped in centuries of dust. "They say she was a witch." Just then, a gust of wind swept through the streets, causing shivers to run down spines. The tightly wrapped tales of her sewing and her family masked untold mysteries and unspeakable events. Every glance exchanged was heavy with a hidden agenda. Folks meticulously shared theories about the Proverbs 31 woman. What if there was a reason for her unreachable perfection? The old oak tree at the town square bore witness to it all, its branches heavy with secrets long forgotten. It was said that under the cover of darkness, she would chant and summon, stirring the air with echoed laughter that turned into screams. The truth about this seemingly pious woman slipped deeper into shadows with every repulsive rumor, each more sensational than the last. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the moon rose, painting everything in ghostly white, the whispers began anew. Had the Proverbs 31 woman truly walked down a path of darkness? What else was hidden beneath the surface? Maybe it was time someone unearthed these secrets. Maybe it was time the town faced the truths that could crumble the very foundation they built their lives upon. After all, every perfect picture has its shadows, and they were ready to paint the real story. Would anyone dare to look deeper? The night deepened, wrapping Maplewood in a thick cloak of silence, punctuated only by the distant hoot of an owl. Shadows danced around the corners of the dimly lit streets as Elizabeth, a daring young woman disillusioned by the fabrications of her community, made her way toward the church. She had heard the tales, the whispers that climbed higher with every telling, igniting a thrill of rebellion in her heart. Her mind raced as she approached the church, its steeple towering against the moonlit sky like a sentinel guarding secrets. Clenching a small candle in her trembling hand, she felt the weight of her thoughts pressing down like the storm clouds. What if everything had been a lie? What if the Proverbs 31 woman's true story changed everything for the townsfolk? Breathless, Elizabeth pushed the heavy wooden doors open, a creak echoing through the empty sanctuary. The smell of aged wood and varnished pews filled her nostrils as she peered into the dark. She stepped inside and was bathed in the soft flicker of the candlelight, casting elongated shadows that twisted like serpents on the walls. She had come to seek answers. The church was known for its hidden compartments and dusty archives, where the stories of the past lingered. Hard hammering in her chest, Elizabeth navigated the labyrinth of pews and climbed the narrow steps to the old archives. The air turned stale, thick with the scent of mildew, as she pushed open the heavy door. There it was, a large leather-bound book resting on a pedestal, its cover cracked and worn. Its pages whispered tales of faith, but Elizabeth knew better. She sensed something darker beneath the surface. As she flipped through the yellowed pages, names jumped out at her, names of women condemned, marked by shadows of suspicion, tales of witches and burnings, rumors of practices that sent shivers down the spines of the pious. Suddenly she found it. The entry detailing the life of the Proverbs 31 woman. A gasp escaped her lips as she read. The words painted a portrait of a woman much different from the virtuous figure of church teachings. This woman had connections to herbal remedies, to gatherings beneath the oak tree, to whispers of ancient rites that unsettled the community. Elizabeth's breath came in sharp gasps as her finger traced the lines. She couldn't shake the chills running down her spine. What if she unveiled the truth? What if she exposed the lies that had been woven around the Proverbs 31 woman for generations? How would Maplewood react when faced with such a revelation? Her heart raced at the thought of confronting her neighbors with this newfound knowledge. The same faces that smiled in church would turn cold in horror, their dreams of virtue crashing down like a house of cards. Would they listen, or would they brand her a heretic, just as they had done to others? Lost in her thoughts, she barely noticed the noise creeping up behind her. The sound of footsteps soft and deliberate. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Elizabeth's breath caught in her throat. Who was intruding upon her midnight search for truth? Elizabeth, a low voice rumbled from the darkness. You shouldn't be here. What had she stumbled into? Panic surged as she turned to face the voice, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. Who knew her secret mission? And what price would she pay for seeking the truth? The tension hung thick in the air. Was she prepared to face whatever awaited her? The truth beckoned, but at what cost? Would she dare to continue down this twisting path? Elizabeth's eyes darted around the dusty vault-like room, finally landing on the figure emerging from the shadows. A man, cloaked in darkness, his features obscured and menacingly calm. Panic surged through her veins like ice water. Who was he? Did he know what she had just discovered? Who are you? She breathed, her voice trembled, uncertain. The candlelight flickered as though it, too, was afraid, casting an uneasy glow on the stranger's face, the shadows deepening the mystery around him. Names don't matter here, he replied slowly, stepping closer, revealing more of his form, a slim figure, poised yet threatening. What matters is what you stumbled upon, Elizabeth. These secrets, they're not meant for the curious. Her heart hammered in her chest, the weight of her discoveries clinging to her like a shroud. I have to know the truth, she insisted, her voice rising with defiance. If the Proverbs 31 woman is more than what they say, then everything we believe is a lie. People deserve to know. He smirked, the corner of his lips lifting slightly, and Elizabeth felt a shudder ripple down her spine. This town has its ways. The truth is a dangerous thing, and the closer you get, the more risk you invite. She squared her shoulders, unwilling to show fear. I'm willing to take that risk. She raised the candle, illuminating his features, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to glimmer with something unreadable. What do you want from me? Not so much what I want from you, he replied with a hint of challenge, but rather what you're willing to sacrifice to uncover the truth. The walls around her felt like they were closing in, a smothering pressure enveloping her thoughts. Sacrifice? The word lingered, weighing down her resolve. Would she sacrifice her safety, friendships, even her standing in this small town? But the thought of living in a web of lies felt far worse than the unknown of the truth, whatever it might bring. The man leaned closer, his tone low and conspiratorial. I can help you, but understand, once the truth is out, there's no going back. The townsfolk will not stand idly by while their beliefs are questioned. They'll come for you. A cold sweat broke over her forehead as she weighed his words. Did she have the strength to face this unraveling? Her thoughts flitted back to the pages she had read, the stories of women wronged and silenced, connections to dark practices. Those women had fought against the tide of falsehoods, and with every ounce of spirit she possessed, she resolved to do the same. Show me, Elizabeth demanded, her voice clear and unwavering. "Show me what I need to do." He studied her for a moment, his expression inscrutable. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. But you must know, once you choose this path of truth and rebellion, nothing will remain unchanged. You will be holding a candle in the dark, drawing attention to everything you uncover." The mixture of fear and thrill coursed through her. "Then let us start now." With that, he turned to the door, and she followed close behind, stepping out of the archives and back into the heavy night air. She felt exhilarated yet terrified, like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. As they descended the narrow steps, a thought gnawed at her. What awaited her beyond the shadows of this church? Would the townsfolk see the light she'd hoped to bring, or would they extinguish it in fear? With the truth finally set in motion, could she truly handle the consequences? And what would happen when the town found out what they had been blind to all along? Uncertainty swallowed her as they stepped out into the crisp night. The house of cards was about to collapse, but at whose hand? The cold air wrapped around them as Elizabeth stepped into the night, the world outside alive with the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves. Above, the moon cast an eerie glow over the cobblestone streets of her small town, illuminating the path ahead yet masking the darkness that lay just beneath the surface. "Where do we start?" she asked, trying to inject a hint of steadiness into her voice. She felt the adrenaline coursing through her, pushing her forward but also reminding her of the dangers that lurked ahead. "First, we need to visit the library," the man said, his tone deliberate. "There's a book there hidden in plain sight that holds the key to what has been kept away from you all. The town's history is written in the margins." Her stomach flipped. Was it really lurking there, among dusty old volumes that everyone overlooked? As they made their way down dimly lit streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shiver of the wind felt like an unseen presence taking note of their actions. The stranger walked ahead, a silhouette against the moonlight, leading her into the unknown. Elizabeth's mind raced. What truths lay beyond the archives? What history had been erased? And what secrets would unravel her world? Questions fogged her thoughts, but one weighed heavy on her heart. How far was she willing to go to expose the truth? They reached the library, its doors creaking hauntingly as they opened. It exuded a musty smell of old paper and forgotten words. Elizabeth tried to convince herself it was a sanctuary, but the sensation of unease lingered, making it seem more like a haunted tomb. "Follow me," he instructed, guiding her through the labyrinth of shelves. "The book we need is in the restricted section. Only a few get to see what lies within those walls." Restricted? The word sent a jolt through her. It seemed fitting for what was about to transpire. As they approached the forbidding rows that were separated by a wrought iron gate, a shiver rippled down her spine. Was she really prepared to dive into this chamber of secrets? With a small nod from the man, they slipped inside, the dim light casting a sinister hue over the room. Dust motes danced in the air, swirling like ghosts on the fringes of a long-forgotten past. "Here," he said, motioning toward a shelf filled with leather-bound books. The monographs of the ancients. Elizabeth felt her heart race as she reached for a thick volume. The cover was worn, and she could barely make out the title worn smooth by time, The Unveiling of Female Virtues. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, revealing pages filled with spidery script and faded ink. She scanned the yellowed pages. A gasp escaped her lips. Among the devotionals and praises, there were stories of women silenced, of rituals concealed beneath layers of piety, connecting the Proverbs 31 woman to a fate darker than she had ever imagined. "The Proverbs didn't just honor her," he murmured, leaning close enough for her to feel his breath on her neck. "They twisted her into something she wasn't, a tool of control." A tremor of something, fear or anger, rushed through her. Had her entire life been a lie? But just as rapid as her realization struck, A loud bang echoed through the library, reverberating between the walls. Elizabeth's heart stopped. Someone was coming. The threat of discovery hung around them like thick fog, a millstone weighing against her resolve. "Oh no! They found us," the man hissed, his eyes darting toward the door. "Who?" Elizabeth whispered, unable to tear her gaze from the entryway, the flicker of a flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. "It doesn't matter," he urged, panic creeping into his voice. "We need to get out now." With the book clutched tightly against her chest, Elizabeth felt the weight of the truth, cold and heavy. Navigating through the maze of shelves, they slipped into the shadows, but questions clawed at her mind. What would she do with this knowledge? As they escaped the library into the flickering night, Elizabeth knew one thing: she couldn't go back to her old life. But now, a new threat loomed over her, and the shadows weren't the only thing she had to fear. What would happen when the town learned she had resurrected the truth? And would she be strong enough to wield it without being consumed? The chill in the air stung Elizabeth's cheeks as they dashed away from the library, heartbeats pounding in desperate rhythm. The world around them seemed to swirl, the familiar streets now cloaked in an unfamiliar dread. Every rustle of leaves felt like a whisper, every distant footstep a warning. She felt the book pressing against her chest, anchoring her to the moment, and to the terrifying revelations contained within. "Where do we go now?" she gasped, trying to keep pace with the man as he led her through the narrow alleyways of the town. "Eastward. Away from here," he instructed, his voice tight. There was no time for second-guessing. They cut through the winding streets, darting into the shadows, as they caught glimpses of looming figures in the distance. Each time a light flickered nearby, her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected to stumble into danger, but the weight of the book was a reminder that the truth often came at a high cost. "Do you really think they'll come for us?" Elizabeth asked, her voice trembling. "They're not just looking for you. They want to protect what has been hidden for generations. And you're standing in the way." The gravity of his words sent a shiver down her spine. What had she awakened? As they turned a corner, they heaved behind an abandoned building, the crumbling bricks offering little comfort, but some semblance of safety. Still, the shadows felt alive, pulsating with unspoken threats. "Do you understand what you've uncovered?" he asked, urgency in his tone. "Many will do anything to silence you. They'd rather bury the truth than let it surface." "I don't know if I can handle this," Elizabeth confessed. She felt small, swallowed by the enormity of what loomed over her. "You have to. This isn't just about you anymore. There are others out there who need to learn the truth. We can't let fear control our lives." Taking a deep breath, she met his gaze, searching for certainty. "You said there were stories in that book, stories of women. What did they go through?" He shifted, pulling a folded paper from his pocket and handing it to her. "You need to see this. Read it quietly. It tells of the lives that were sacrificed for the sake of a false narrative. Women who were shunned, shamed, silenced." Unfolding the paper, Elizabeth's hand shook. The words seemed to leap off the page. Accounts of trials, whispers of scandals hidden under the guise of respectability. The stories spun a web of pain, betrayal, and freedom, igniting a fire within her. This was more than just an old narrative. It was a call to arms. Suddenly, a shout reverberated from beyond the alley. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed against the cobblestones, ominous like thunder rolling in the distance. Elizabeth's breath hitched as they dashed deeper into the darkness. "Where are we going?" she panted, squinting into the night. "To a safe house," he replied curtly. "But we have to move quickly." In the fleeting moments, the adrenaline surged. Fear danced in her veins, mingling with a flicker of strength. She was ready to fight to reclaim her narrative and others like her. But what awaited them at the safe house? Was it truly a refuge, or merely another trap? The stakes had never felt higher. As they neared their destination, an unmistakable figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. Elizabeth's heart plummeted. The glow of the streetlight caught a glint in the intruder's eyes, a wicked smile spreading across familiar features. "Did you really think you could uncover those secrets without consequences?" The voice dripped with malice. Elizabeth's blood ran cold. There was no turning back. What had she unleashed? And would the darkness consume her before she could rally those who needed to be heard? The figure stepped closer, dim light casting eerie shadows on its face. It was a face Elizabeth thought she'd never see again, a ghost from her past, wrapped in malice and vengeance. Vincent, once a trusted friend, now stood before her like a predator ready to pounce. "Vincent," she whispered, disbelief clawing at her throat. "What are you doing here?" He chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You should know by now. I've always been 2 steps ahead of you, Elizabeth. Did you really think you could dive into those secrets without consequences?" Fear twisted in her gut. She glanced at her companion, whose knife-like gaze fixed on Vincent. "We need to move," he urged, pulling Elizabeth closer as though creating a human shield between them. "What secrets have you uncovered?" Vincent pressed, advancing slowly. "The lies that protect the weak? The stories that make women victims?" His eyes glinted. "Or perhaps it's the truth about how vile and twisted they really are?" The weight of the book felt heavier against her ribs. "You wouldn't understand," she shot back, trembling. "These women deserve to be honored, not hidden away." Vincent scoffed. "Honored? Or manipulated?" He stepped even closer, invading her space. "You don't have the slightest idea what is at stake. If you expose those stories, you might just awaken a beast that can't be silenced." "What do you mean? Who are you really working for?" Her voice quivered, caught between fear and defiance. As if on cue, a dark shadow materialized behind him, more figures emerging from the alleyway. Elizabeth's heart raced. They were surrounded. Fear clawed at her, as the urgency of the moment sank in. This was no simple confrontation. It was a trap meticulously orchestrated to ensnare her. Vincent smiled wider, the perfect monster in the dark. "You'll learn soon enough, Elizabeth. All your little discoveries will come crashing down on you. You think you've found courage? You've merely danced into a web woven by those far more powerful than you." The man beside her gripped her arm tighter, his resolve unwavering. "No one is more powerful than the truth." "Truth?" Vincent spat, his eyes narrowing. "Truth is subjective. It bends to the will of those who wield it." To Elizabeth, each of his words felt like daggers aimed right at her heart. "What did you do?" she dared to ask, breathing heavily. "To keep those women silent?" He leaned in, close enough to feel his foul breath. "You should be asking yourself what you're willing to sacrifice for their freedom. Because once you unleash those stories, there is no going back." The fierce wind howled, a cold gust wrapping around them, as if trying to pull them apart. Elizabeth's mind raced. This was bigger than secrets. It was a battle for survival, for truth, and for lies that had been silenced too long. Before she could think through her next move, the figures tightened their circle. She could feel the weight of their gaze, the predatory energy surrounding them. Fear surged through her, but a flicker of rebellion ignited her spirit. "Run!" she shouted, breaking the momentary paralysis. With her heart pounding in her chest, she plunged into the shadows once more, dragging her companion behind her. The darkness seemed alive, twisting as they sprinted away from the menace of Vincent and his followers. What awaited them down the narrow streets? Would they find the safety they desperately needed, or would the hunt consume them both? As they dashed around a corner, Elizabeth's thoughts were a tempest. The stories they had uncovered felt more like a curse with each step. But could she really turn back now? She risked a glance over her shoulder and gasped. Vincent and his crew were in hot pursuit, eyes burning with determination. They were relentless. But amidst that fear, an undeniable urge filled her, the urge to fight back, to uncover the truth, whatever the cost. Was she brave enough to face what lay ahead? Or would the nightmare of her past swallow her whole? As she rounded another corner, shock rippled through her. A familiar building loomed large. "Is that?" she breathed, recognizing the entrance to the old church. What secrets lay inside? Would it be the sanctuary she craved, or a trap devised by her pursuers? Time hung heavy as she stood at the threshold, caught between two worlds, the past she wanted to escape and the truth that could liberate her. What choice would she make, and would it cost her everything? The moment stretched, every second heavy with uncertainty. Elizabeth stood frozen, her heart racing, the sound of pounding footsteps drawing closer. The church stood before her, silent and foreboding, yet somehow inviting in its promise of refuge. She felt a tug of recognition, memories flooded her mind, warm candles, whispered prayers, and the flicker of hope that once thrived within those walls. "Elizabeth!" Her companion snapped, urgency snapping her back to reality. "We don't have time." With a shuddering breath, she moved forward, pushing open the heavy door. The hinges creaked like the groan of a long-forgotten spirit. The darkness inside stirred, a musty scent collaring her senses. She hesitated, but Tony urged her on, his grip firm on her shoulder. "This way," he whispered, pulling her deeper into the sanctuary. Inside, shadows danced as their eyes adjusted. The moonlight barely pierced through the stained glass, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. Each step felt treacherous, the floorboards whispering secrets beneath their feet. Elizabeth's mind spun, but one thought clung to her like a lifeline. Would the truth hide behind these veiled walls, or were they merely walking into a trap set by Vincent? In the oppressive silence, they moved cautiously toward the altar area. Elizabeth's breath came in quick gasps, her instincts screaming that they were being watched. Every flicker of movement sent adrenaline surging through her veins. She could feel the weight of the past pressing down on her, all the stories she had buried, the lives she had aimed to illuminate, all converging at this moment. "Listen," Tony said, his eyes wide as he tilted his head, straining to hear beyond the thumping of their hearts. Silence. Then faint voices, drifting from the sanctuary's depths. "Vincent, stop," he murmured, urgency flashing across his features. "They'll find us." Crouching behind a worn pew, Elizabeth's mind whirled. The truth spooled inside her like a tightly wound thread, ready to unravel. "We can't let them take what we've uncovered," she declared fiercely. But would exposing those lies just place others in harm's way? The far door creaked open, light spilling in like an unwelcome guest. Elizabeth's pulse quickened. Vincent's voice rose sharp and taunting amidst the darkness. "You think hiding will save you?" he called. "You're missing the bigger picture." Heart in her throat, she strained to listen, feeling the pulsing beat of danger echoing against the ornate walls. "Those women you're trying to protect aren't just victims, they're pawns in a game much larger. If you release their truths, it may cost more than you can imagine." Elizabeth's gut sank as she exchanged wary glances with Tony. The weight of Vincent's words hung heavily in the air. It wasn't just the stories at stake. It was the entire vulnerable web entwined around them. "What do we do?" she whispered, fear coursing through her veins, threatening to suffocate her resolve. "We stay hidden," Tony hissed, glancing towards the growing shadows creeping closer. "But we can't let them get to the knowledge we've." Before he could finish, the door flung open wider, and a flood of light illuminated their hiding spot. Elizabeth gasped, pulling Tony back just as he was about to make a move. "Pathetic," Vincent sneered, stepping into the church. His crew followed like dark phantoms. "You think you can dodge me? This place will be your grave, and your stories will die with you." As his gaze swept the room, Elizabeth felt every nerve scream to act. They were cornered, trapped between their desire for truth and the ominous threat looming over them. With her heart pounding in her chest, Elizabeth made a desperate decision. She leaned closer to Tony, murmuring, "We've come too far to back down now. We take this fight to him." A wild spark of determination ignited, pushing aside the fear. She reached for the old rusted candlestick lying discarded on the floor, hefting it in her hand as though it were a lifeline. Would she wield it like a sword or a shield? The tension hung thick as Vincent's smirk widened, sensing her resolve. "Fighting back, are we?" he challenged, stepping further into the light. "You'll regret this choice." As Elizabeth steadied herself, she realized she had crossed a threshold. The air crackled with impending confrontation. Would she stand her ground and unleash the truth, or would Vincent's vendetta snuff out her light? Time froze, every decision heavy on her shoulders. Then came the sound, loud, splintering, the crash of something breaking into pieces, sending a shiver through the very foundations of the church. What lay behind that door? Was it hope for salvation, or a darkness even Vincent feared to confront? As she drew a deep breath, Elizabeth felt the pull of fate drawing her onward into the unknown again. What secret was about to surface, and would it change everything? The crashing noise rang out like a gunshot, reverberating through the church and jolting Elizabeth from her resolve. She tightened her grip on the candlestick, the rusted metal now feeling cold and heavy in her palm. The shadows danced wildly, ominous figures looming closer, seemingly emboldened by the chaos. "Stay low," Tony hissed, pulling her further behind the pews. The sharpness in his voice snapped her back into focus. She could almost feel the weight of their shared fears pressing down as they crouched together, hearts pounding in a syncopated rhythm of dread. Vincent's laughter echoed, dark and mocking. "What is this? A brash little rebellion?" he taunted. "So naive. You truly think you can challenge what has been long hidden?" A heavy dread settled in Elizabeth's stomach. This wasn't just about them anymore. It felt like a showdown between light and dark, of truth against a powerful lie that consumed everything in its path. She exchanged a glance with Tony, who had steeled his expression, determination replacing the panic in his eyes. "What do we know about that door?" Tony whispered, an urgent glint sparking in his gaze. "It's where the sound came from," Elizabeth murmured back, remembering the way Vincent's crew had been drawn in that direction. Every instinct warned her it was a risk, but something significant felt just on the other side, something that could tip the scales in their favor. With a slow nod, they both slid out from behind the pew just as the shadows moved, shuffling closer under Vincent's command. Elizabeth could sense her heart thundering louder than before, the adrenaline surging as she took a bold step forward. "Listen!" she called into the darkness, her voice stronger than she felt. "What you're all hiding, it's going to come out. You can't silence the truth forever." Vincent's smirk faltered for just a second, but then he recovered, rage igniting behind his eyes. "Foolish girl," he sneered. "You have no idea what you're playing with." Suddenly, the door burst open wider, causing Elizabeth to stumble back, the shadows spilling like ink across the church floor. And there they were, faces she recognized and one she didn't. Women, frightened and desperate. Their worn expressions told tales of pain and burdens carried long. But amongst them stood one, staring resolutely right back at Elizabeth, Mary, a journalist who had gone missing months ago, while tracking what had once seemed like a mere conspiracy. The confusion flickered between them. Elizabeth felt a wave of hope cross the chasm of despair. "Mary! You're alive! I had to find you!" Mary croaked, stepping forward as shadows lurked behind her, menacing but not menacing enough to silence hope. "But we're not safe here!" Vincent roared, anger erupting. "Secure them!" he barked at his crew. The chaos rippled through the small gathering of frightened women, a swell of panic rising in their eyes. "Get back!" Tony shouted, the urgency cutting through the noise. He stepped forward, positioning himself between Elizabeth and the encroaching shadows. "We will not let you take them." For a heartbeat, silence enveloped the church, a thick barrier of tension blocking out everything else. Was this endgame? Elizabeth felt her breath catch. She could see it now, how every moment hinged on the decisions they made next. Then, with a swift movement, she made a choice. "We stand together," she cried out, rallying the women around her. "Follow me." Mary's voice broke through, fierce and determined. The other women began to gather, forming a line, their shared fear morphing into collective strength. "Fools!" Vincent spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You don't know what is coming. You're all blind to the stakes involved." But Elizabeth's resolve surged, pushing aside the dread that threatened to swallow her whole. They had the knowledge, they had the stories. And perhaps, armed with unity, they could combat the darkness that threatened to engulf them. In that moment, Elizabeth felt a flicker of hope, small but undeniable, pierce through the dread. Was this truth actually within reach? Then, just as she was about to step forward, a deafening explosion shattered the air, the church trembling violently, flickering lights casting dramatic shadows against the chaos unfolding. What had they awakened? Was this the chance they needed, or the nightmare they had been trying to escape? The ground beneath them shook dangerously, and in that split second, Elizabeth knew they were standing on the brink. What lay ahead as they fought to escape? Would they confront the storm, or would Vincent's shadow consume them all? The explosion roared like a beast unleashed, sending debris raining down. The shriek of splintering wood echoed in the chaos, the once hallowed walls of the church quaking under the force. Elizabeth staggered, instinctively gripping Tony's arm, as the ground beneath them shivered like a frightened animal. "Stay together," Tony shouted, his voice barely breaking through the din, but it struck a chord in Elizabeth's chest. She felt a tether, his strength anchoring her as shards of plaster fell like confetti from the ceiling. The terrified women huddled close, their faces pale, a mix of fear and determination wrinkling their brows. Vincent's crew hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden eruption, and in that moment, Elizabeth saw opportunity. "Now!" she cried, pushing the women into motion. "We have to go." Out the side door. They rushed toward a narrow passageway, the flickering light guiding them through the smoke swirling in the air. Elizabeth took a quick glance back. Vincent stood at the center, fury etched across his features, fists clenched. He was not beaten yet. "Get them!" he bellowed, his tone a whip that cracked in the chaos. Forcing herself to keep calm, Elizabeth led the pack, her heart a battle drum pounding against her ribcage. The fear radiated from everyone, wrapping them like a shroud. They burst through the door, spilling out into the cool night air. But freedom was a mirage. As they stumbled into the moonlit yard, Elizabeth was met with a harrowing sight. Vincent South's men followed close behind, shadows merging with the night, their faces grim, eyes shining with a predatory gleam. "You think you can escape us?" one of them snarled, grabbing for a woman on the edge of the group. "Run!" Mary screamed, her words cutting through the night, igniting a frenzy of movement. Elizabeth pushed forward, her focus narrowing. She didn't dare look back. Every second mattered, every heartbeat a reminder of the danger creeping closer. Terror clawed at her throat, but adrenaline fueled her legs. They dashed across the grass, toward the old oak tree that stood like a sentinel at the far end of the yard. Behind them, shouts echoed, and the ground thudded sickeningly as Vincent's men pursued. Just as Elizabeth reached the trunk, she stumbled, falling against the rough bark, gasping for breath. Her lungs burned, but she glanced around frantically for everyone. Tony came close, his face tightened with urgency. "We can't stop. We have to find a way to hide." "Over here," Mary cried, pointing to a gnarled hole at the base of the tree. "Quickly!" The group squeezed into the cramped space as the sounds of pursuit grew louder. There was no time for questions or fear, only survival. Inside the dimness, Elizabeth could barely see Mary beside her, sweating and breathing heavily. "What were you doing there?" Mary whispered fiercely. "What did you find?" "It's about a cover-up. People's lives are at stake," Elizabeth replied, recalling the fragments of information she'd pieced together over the months. "Vincent isn't just a criminal. This runs deeper." Just then, a sharp noise echoed from outside, the unmistakable sound of heavy feet crunching through the grass. A flashlight beam swung wildly, cutting through the darkness, inching closer. The pounding in Elizabeth's ears drowned out everything but the raw urgency of the moment. "Shoo!" Tony hissed, visibly seething. "They're right there." Silence enveloped them like a blanket. The air was thick with fear, the very essence of their dilemma hidden in a moment of despair, hoping for salvation as they listened to the men outside. Then, as Vincent's voice drifted closer, it turned into an ominous whisper that chilled Elizabeth's bones. "They can't hide forever, and soon all secrets will be brought to light." Their hearts raced, but the words hung heavily, an eerie promise laced with menacing certainty. What had they truly awoken in the dark corners of this church? And how far would Vincent go to protect his secrets? As they waited, the tension boiling into an almost palpable force, Elizabeth knew they had crossed a threshold from which there might be no return. Would the truth finally set them free, or would it lead to their demise? Only time would tell, but in that heartbeat of darkness, they were teetering on the edge of everything they once thought they knew. The night had transformed into a battlefield of despair and hope, tension snapping like a taut wire strained to its breaking point. Elizabeth's heart raced as whispers of Vincent and his crew drifted through the branches outside their hiding place. The darkness surrounded them like a living thing, choking the air yet somehow amplifying the pulse of resolve within her. "Elizabeth," Mary whispered, her voice strained. "If we don't act fast, we're done for." The tension in the air was electric, every second thickening like molasses in their throats. She could hear them outside, shuffling and grumbling, a pack of wolves circling their prey. "My past, it isn't just about me," Elizabeth began, but the weight of her words remained unspoken, the burden of all those women's secrets pressing against her chest. The truth felt both liberating and imprisoning. "I can't back down now. We need to find the others." A realization ignited within her. The stories weren't just fragments waiting to be told. They were a force powerful enough to rise against the predatory darkness. "We have to gather everyone." In the pause that followed, Tony's voice surged in command. "We need to secure our escape. Once we step out, we take back our power. It's time to turn these shadows into our allies." They squinted into the dark as Vincent's crew continued to rant, hunting for their scents like hounds on a hunt. The will to fight surged within Elizabeth. "Together," she urged. "Together, we can unveil the truth." With a unanimous nod, the group huddled closer. Outside, the sound of approaching footsteps sharpened. They were dangerously close. Elizabeth took a deep breath, the plan petrifying yet exhilarating. "We rush out, and we run towards the square where everyone gathers. They won't expect us to head there. It'll give us a chance." Mary's eyes glinted with understanding. "We'll rally the rest. They don't have power unless we cower." The determination igniting the spirit of rebellion within the others maddened by silence for too long. "Let us go," Elizabeth commanded, voice unwavering despite the fear bubbling in her gut. In the next heartbeat, they surged toward the entrance of their refuge, hearts pounding down every corridor of their minds. "Now," Tony said, bursting into motion as the group emerged from their hiding spot, breaking free from the suffocating dark of the oak tree. The cold night air hit them like a refreshing wave, awakening their senses. Elizabeth led the charge, adrenaline flooding her senses as they sprinted towards the town square. Behind them, chaos erupted. Vincent's crew shouted wildly, disoriented, as they caught sight of the group. Elizabeth caught a glimpse of Vincent's furious face, his expression twisting with the desire for domination. "You fools! You can't win!" he growled, but they weren't turning back. They barreled forward, urgency coating their every step. Shadows fled in the wake of their determination, pushing beyond the fear gathered in their hearts like a tide. "People of Maplewood, listen!" Elizabeth's voice cut through the night as they burst into the square. Her heart thundered at the sight of baffled townsfolk, people she had known her entire life, gathered around the dim lights. "We have uncovered the truth," she gasped, catching her breath but refusing to relent. "The stories you've been fed lie draping over women's lives like shrouds. Together, we can lift the veil." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as they took note of the fierce coalition standing unified, fierce with hope rather than fear. But there was no solace yet. The air buzzed with tension as Vincent's crew spilled into the square behind them, seething and furious. "Silence them," Vincent bellowed, fury collapsing onto those who still hesitated. "Don't let this charade fool you." Elizabeth squared her shoulders in front of everyone, fusing her resolve with that of her companions. "No! We won't be silenced. We owe it to everyone who came before us, to those whose voices were snuffed out. We're here to break the chains." Faint whispers of agreement began to swell, but the shadow of Vincent loomed heavy, still powerful and holding decades of secrets in his grasp. "You have no idea what chaos you invite," he yelled, eyes blazing. Yet something shifted in the crowd. One by one, faces began to turn, defiance blossoming amongst the fearful. "We choose our truth," a voice from the crowd shouted, and then another joined. Realization lit Elizabeth's chest. "They're on our side," she pleaded with Tony and Mary, determination sparking within them like lightning. Drawing from the strength of those around her, Elizabeth stepped forward. Her words spilled like the powerful flood of truth they had long suppressed. Women can reclaim their narratives. The Proverbs 31 woman wasn't just a figure. She was a sisterhood of strength, a link forged in resilience. Behind her, a new tide rose, hands grasping one another's, faces bathing in newfound light. Women stepped forward, joining Elizabeth as she spoke of unity and hope. In that moment, every whisper from the past came crashing like waves against the chains Vincent had built. Suddenly Vincent shouted, "You're all fools." But the crowd had transformed. Their voices bounced off the walls of Maplewood, binding as one against oppression. Then, loud and clear, Elizabeth bellowed, "We will expose you, Vincent, and all you represent. This isn't just a local battle. It's a fight for every woman here and gone, buried in stories long hidden." The stakes surged higher as anger shifted not towards each other, but at the darkness that had long held sway over everything they considered their home. "Let us stand together. Let us ignite the spark that will illuminate every shadow." The townsfolk rallied, powerful and fierce, a moving tide shifting against the darkness. Elizabeth felt the heat of their rising strength, lifting her resolve higher than she ever thought possible. Vincent's eyes widened in realization, the cacophony of defiance washing over him like a tsunami. "You will regret this." But it was too late. Unity had roared to life, and the shadows that had once served Vincent began to dissolve. The truth was out, and with it came a clarity so profound, the oppression could not stand against such fierce resolve. As the darkness receded, Elizabeth knew they had awakened a power that nobody, not Vincent, nor any shadow, could ever silence again, and through it all, a sense of peace washed over her heart. They had emerged from the darkness, uncovering stories left untold. Their journey wasn't done. It had only just begun. This was the moment they fought for, the beginning of their truth, and yet the weight still hung heavy around them. They needed to rally more for the battles yet to come. As Elizabeth stood, looking into the eyes of those she had fought beside, a quiet determination filled her. This was just the beginning of a far greater story than she had ever anticipated. A new dawn was coming, and she was ready to embrace it. Now, this is where you come in. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will unravel even more hidden truths. Smash that like button, because it feeds the algorithm and spreads the word like wildfire. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about this ending. What did you think of the twist? What's next for Elizabeth and the women of Maplewood? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and stand up for the truth. Together, we can write the stories that have long been hidden. Join us.